We've got a great audience and some co-hosts today. On my left here, Jonathan Culver is our solution architect based in London who supports our European customers. And on my right, I'm very excited to have Jeremy Smith, who's the CTO of JELLYFISH Pictures. And Jeremy's a pioneer in all things infrastructure, really trailblazing in moving graphics workstations from on-premise to the cloud. So it's really exciting that he's going to be here to answer a Q&A. And myself, I'm Ian Main, technical principal at Teradici. I've been with Teradici since the founding team about 12 years or more. And I'm excited to hear about the requirements of the media and entertainment industry, and particularly post-production, which is a very successful area for Teradici. So we'll have three parts. I will start off giving you some context to why this market shift is changing from on-premises workstations to the cloud. Jonathan here will give some demonstration on some of the management features to help one manage a deployment that's not on premises. And then Jeremy's going to show hopefully some cool stuff from a hybrid deployment that he has back in his London facility. And then we'll have some time at the end for questions and answers. And hopefully we can get some engaging discussion based on interest you have need. So just as a show of hands, how many of you are familiar with Teradici Corporation? So maybe half of the team. So I'll give a quick introduction for those of you who are not. We started in 2004 doing a silicon-based acceleration of separating an encoder, which was silicon-based, and a decoder to allow you to put your graphics workstation away from under your desk. Originally, it was in a back office inside of the environment. Then it moved to a data center, and now our customers are using it in the public cloud as well. So we started in 2004, and as artists, they'd be very familiar with devices like this. This is a silicon decoder device. So all in here is no software, just a decoder, connects up to displays and tablets. And this is what sits under the desk instead of having all your workstation blowing heat. So we, in about 2009, took the hardware encoder and we created a software equivalent, and that was licensed under VMware Horizon, which some people may be familiar with as a VDI infrastructure, and then later with Amazon Workspaces. So there are many different implementations now of the PCI-IP protocol, both hardware and software-based. Now, what many people in the media and entertainment industry, and particularly post-production, may not realize is that in about 2016, Teradici started offering software-based services directly for enterprises to consume themselves as a product that they install on either a virtualized workstation or on a public cloud. And we're going to talk today about these software-based solutions which allow you to have a deployment that is no longer in your corporate data center. And more recently, firstly, it was on Microsoft Azure, but more recently we have partnerships with Google, Amazon. There's a Market AMI instance on AWS that allows you to just deploy it as a marketplace instance. And we're also demonstrating through Oracle, who also have a public cloud initiative. And we're working more closely with companies like Wacom, which require special connectivity to get the artists to experience their desktops as if they had their workstations locally. So Teradici's PCI-IP protocol is used in many industries. We have more than 10 million end users. About 3.5 million of those Xero clients are in the market today. But what we found a number of years ago is that in the post-production industry, the PCI-IP protocol is used by thousands, if not tens of thousands of artists worldwide. And when we did some investigation into why that was, we found out that if we meet the needs of the media and entertainment industry, which are very demanding in terms of performance, accuracy, color, and these types of requirements, other industries will also adopt the protocol. So that's why I'm here, because I'm always very interested to hear the requirements of this industry, and those help us make the correct decisions in terms of making the product work for other markets. So for those of you who are not familiar with the protocol, it's called PC over IP. So some people know PC over IP, but they don't know of Teradici. It's the same company based in British Columbia, Canada. PC over IP is a method of taking the display buffer from a graphics or non-graphics workstation, encrypting the display, and then transmitting it over LAN or WAN environment as a highly encrypted protocol, and then displaying it on a client, which could be elsewhere in the office, or it could be halfway around the world. It doesn't matter. The protocol is agnostic to the network latency. And as I said, for this industry, what's particularly important is color graphics, accuracy, it's distortion-free, and the displayed image at the client side is a bit exact representation of what is done generated at the host, and that's very important for doing things like color work, because you can't have the protocol putting artifacts and deficiencies into the experience. Otherwise, artists don't know if it's the protocol that's distorting or whether the source is distorting. So let's talk a bit about this transition from desktops under the desk to workstations under the desk to a cloud, which could be on-premise, hybrid, virtualized deployment, or it could be a public cloud deployment. I think this audience would know better than myself that production schedules are being squeezed. There's a lot of, through the new offerings of media with over-the-top, there's added consumption, there's limited budget. Content formats are changing, so this is a time of transition in the industry. And along with the technological change, there's a need to be able to get more artists at very short time, take advantage of tax credits which aren't necessarily local to your studio. And so remote computing technology, where you utilizing cloud technology, allows you to have this flexibility of bursting not only your render farms, which is happening very fast as a technology adoption, but also bursting your artists to the cloud and being able to scale your productions up and down in line with the work that comes online. Of course, we can't talk about content without talking about security, and we're going to talk a bit about security in the future, but just in a few slides' time. But the point is that we have an encrypted protocol, and we can meet the security requirements of the studios and the producers. And of course, you need to have the performance that your artists are expecting from a local workstation. So if we look at the evolution of desktops, at the back corner there are artists who use workstations still under their desks. Are there any artists studios here who still use that? I think a few, because I've spoken to. For those who've already adopted protocols such as PC over IP, they would be familiar with these host cards, which is a PCI card plugs into a workstation, typically a rack-mounted workstation. And that's the second step in the evolution. Now we're getting a conversion, as I said, to the software-based encoding on the host side. And this has been driven by more flexibility, allowing yourself to choose your data center, not being limited to CapEx type expenditure, because if you're going virtualized, you can get different efficiencies. And that last step of going to the public cloud is not going to be for all studios. Some studios would rather stay with a on-premises virtualized environment. But what's going to happen is there's going to be an offering of different public clouds. Some studios may choose to use multiple clouds, some may choose to use one, and they will require predominantly Linux workstations in this industry, as well as Windows, of course. There's also this content change I mentioned, so high dynamic range and high frame rate along with that is creating new challenges for us as protocol vendors to get additional compression, because obviously if you have a 4K display, you have a lot more pixels that you need to transmit over the network. So these are the challenges that are being addressed by these software environments. And of course, some companies may choose to go directly from a traditional workstation to a public cloud. Others will choose to have a hybrid deployment. And speaking of hybrid, it costs a lot of money to build a data center with remote workstations. Jeremy can probably attest to that. So this transition will not be a fast one. People want to get their capital return on their existing equipment, and what we see is that small projects, for example, a small movie or a proof of concept with a few artists, will start using the new technology while the primary pipeline stays, and then over time transitioning. We also see some predominantly Linux houses will have a few Windows workstations for Photoshop, for example, and that's an easy opportunity to just take a small subset of your pipeline and move that into either virtualized or cloud-based without putting your main pipeline at risk. So this next slide is an architectural view of what a hybrid deployment might look like. On the left-hand side, there's a remote workstation with a PCI IP host card. So this is the original silicon encoder I talked about. And alongside that is a virtualized workstation, so potentially an EXXI-based server with user workstations on top of that. And you'll see there those 4 R boxes. That's the render farm, which of course is important to any post-production house. And the problem with your private data center is that that render farm is limited in size and it's expensive to run. And so are the workstations. So most studios will have a pipeline infrastructure where they feed the virtualized workstations or the remote workstations into the render farm when the artists aren't working to take advantage of those extra processing cores in the evenings. And of course, this creates extra complexity for the workflow, but it's the best way to get your capital return. Also, those render farms are limited in size, given that on the right-hand side, you will see that big, expansible render farm. So on the left-hand side, at most, the big studios have a few thousand cores in-house. But if you go to a public cloud, you now get many tens of thousands of cores on demand, and you're only paying for that rendering service as you need it, and then you switch it down. So if your production schedule is tight and you have the budget, you can increase the number of cores and then turn it off at the end of the project. So it's very flexible. But what's interesting for the virtual workstation side is you have that same flexibility. You can, instead of having to feed your workstations into your render farm, you can just turn them on, turn them off, and we'll demonstrate a bit about what that looks like. And so your added workstation capacity can be on demand, just like your render farm is on demand. And then on the far right is the Cloud Access Manager, which is the way you manage this service. Jonathan will speak a little bit about that. So I'm going to talk briefly about content security. You can't, in 5 minutes, give it much justice. I was at the recent NAB Content Security Summit in Las Vegas, where they launched this Trusted Partner Network initiative at the bottom. And if you haven't seen that before, it's worth going, and there's a website understanding what that is. But that's about aligning the compliance requirements for studios so that instead of getting individual audits from all the different production houses, you can it all gets aligned, and every studio on an annual basis gets a single compliance, and then the production houses will work to an audit, a known list of studios that are compliant. So that's in conjunction with the fact that many of the big studios are already using cloud services for rendering. They're meeting the audit requirements for public cloud today. There are many major productions, which I think Jungle Book is one, that have been rendered on public cloud resources. So the difficulty is more about getting your policies and procedures in place to make sure that your network extends out to the public cloud, not that the public cloud has any security risks. In fact, given the large teams that public clouds have to put towards security, dedicated teams, they have third-party security audits. So it's a very secure environment if it's built properly into your own network. And of course, for adding virtual workstations, which is what we're talking about, we now have no more data that's at risk when it's in flight. The only access to the machine is through encrypted pixels, and so the content can be secured. This is a slide just articulates what I mean. To meet the compliance requirements of major studios, you need to have an air gap, which is the red dashed line between your content network, which is the database out on the left, and the public internet. And the way you achieve this is if you access the remote workstations inside of that air gap across PCI over IP or an encrypted protocol, you inherently get an access method that will be certified by the major studios. As I say, many major studios already get compliance using PCI over IP. And then that link out on the right for PCI over IP is a reverse link where from the remote workstation you can access the public internet also over PCI over IP, so you can't get contaminated content coming into the remote workstation. And then there's a back way to get those when artists need to go out and get various artifacts and search the web and check on the internet connections. They can do all that, check their social media. They can do all that through a secure method too. Now, the two big questions we get for people looking to use public cloud as opposed to their on-premises environment is what are the network considerations, and then what's the latency consideration. So from a network point of view, there's no one answer. It really depends on each artist's environment and what the specific work they're doing. The way our protocol works is if there's no change on a display, then there's no network traffic being used at all. And if you're using very high quality dual HD displays, you could be driving 100 megabits per second or more to get the high quality, much higher quality than, for example, an H.264 type compression. So one needs to consider the topology. Is it 1, 2, or 4 displays? What's the work? If artists are just using Wacom tablets and doing routering work, then that's actually very low network bandwidth versus people who are doing review and playback, which is a higher demand. But on average, that's a graph from a studio where they have 69 users, and they're using less than 10 megabits per second on average. The way you could check is if you're already a PCI over IP user, you can characterize your users, or if you're not a PCI over IP user, you take a small subset of users and you can characterize what their requirement would be. And finally, the latency. So the protocol is agnostic to the latency. So the demonstrations that we're showing on Jonathan's, which was on an Amsterdam system, I set up from Vancouver so we can run across the world. The interactivity was very poor for an artist, though. So I was able to set up a system, but it wasn't. It was too far away to be highly interactive. But when you're within 20 to 25 milliseconds of latency, a Wacom tablet can be bridged directly with all its features to a user. And I drew that's red circle. It covers about London, and we did a test into Jeremy's system, and that's about 25 milliseconds across the public internet. If you use a Soho Net or one of these dedicated service providers, you get much more efficient and lower network. For network latencies over 20 to 25 milliseconds and up to maybe 50 or 75 milliseconds, we add some special capabilities in that Zero client. We call it local termination. And that allows you to, by reflecting the user activity on the display as well as the remote user, we can get a much higher performance out to a bigger distance. And at the NAB show where we were showing this, we had a connection from Las Vegas to Dallas, which is 1,200 miles, so a much bigger area than this screen would show. And we had artists running at 45 milliseconds latency, and they were quite happy with the performance. It will depend on what exact function your artists are doing, but that gives you a sense of the type of latency. So being in Europe, you're very lucky in that there's data centers well distributed around Europe, and so you can always find one that's going to be within this range. And I think that's it from my opening, and I can pass it on to Jonathan to talk about the management of it. Thank you.
Should we swap seats? So what we're going to look at today is a product called Cloud Access Software, where we can deploy virtual workstations in the cloud. So I use the term virtual because it is a virtual workstation. It's hosted somewhere else. And our product allows us to do things like provisioning, which is the building, the automation of creating a workstation. And instead of going to Dell or HP or someone else and asking them to send you a workstation in 6 or 8 weeks, this comes up in tens of minutes or even minutes. So you're using a script, you automate the building of a machine, it joins your domain, and then it can be assigned to a user. We can also do brokering, where we assign a virtual workstation to an individual or a group of individuals, so the workstation could be used in the most efficient manner. And you can then decide, as the administrator, who gets access to what. We also have power management. This is very important because you're changing your financial model from a capital expenditure to operational expenditure, where you're renting the workstation effectively in the cloud. And this costs money. So if you're renting, you're thinking about, how do I maintain my cost structure so you can turn the machine off. When you're turning the machine off, it stops costing you money. So that's what we do. We provide power management. It's not about saving electricity, it's about saving the costs of the virtual machine in the cloud. We also have session monitoring as well. This is very important for performance. So we can tell you with our own tools how much bandwidth you're using. We can tell you the latency that you're running from your office to the data center. We can tell you round trip time. We can tell you minimum, maximum bandwidth, all lovely things like that to allow you to optimize and also to capacity plan for the workstations that you may have in different projects. Okay, so this is a typical environment. The big cloud would be your virtual private network in whatever cloud provider you want to have. This can also be a public or a hybrid cloud, and within there you have your render farm, your storage for your data and your intellectual property. You'll have an Active Directory structure which has your users and your authentication and your permissions, etc. And also within there, the top two machines, the Windows and Linux machines, are your virtual workstations where you're doing your applications, your Nuke, your Maya, your Houdini. And this is all run with cloud access software. So this is what projects those pixels from those workstations to your users wherever they may be, in the Euroland and also post-Brexit land when that happens, unfortunately. At the bottom, it shows you the client types. So, for example, typically in a studio, we will see people using a zero client like that is being passed around the room. That would be on a user's desk, an editor's desk, an artist's desk. And when they come out of the office and eventually they go home after doing a long job, they may take a laptop with them, and they will have a PC over IP software client on them to continue looking at the workstation from another position, whether it's their house or a cafe or a hotel or a conference like this. So you can continue to work wherever you may be. We also have mobile clients for tablets, so iOS, Android, and Chromebook as well. So we give you a variety of clients you can use to look at the same workstation wherever you're positioned. One other thing we also allow in there is multi-factor authentication. So for example, within Teradici, we use a multi-factor authentication system called Duo, which is radius compliant. So if you need to add extra layers of login security because the studio in California have told you to do, you can implement higher levels of security for login when users are going to access their workstations. Okay, this is showing you a mixture, so a public cloud and on-premise, because most of us are worried about making a big jump into the cloud. So a lot of studios are testing the water, putting a new project into the cloud or trying a proof of concept in the cloud, but they're keeping and retaining the workstations under the desk or in the data center. So a lot of studios already have Teradici in hardware form, and they're now testing Teradici in a software form in the cloud. And you can see the VPN, which is connecting both of these networks together. Again, you've got public workstations, you've got on-premise workstations, and the clients are the same. So you're using the same technology across your network, you're just extending your on-premise into the cloud to give you flexibility and the ability to rise up, take a few more workstations without waiting for Dell or HP or your reseller to deliver the hardware that may come in 6 weeks. So your project is live immediately after 10 minutes of starting a machine. That's how quick it is. Okay. You can see the PC over IP traffic. This is in green. So it's the same traffic. It has the same characteristics, whether it's on-premise or on a public cloud. Any questions on that? Okay. One of the benefits of PC over IP and remote working is you reduce heat, and I wish I could reduce the heat in this room, because a workstation under your desk is hot and noisy, and it's insecure as well. Yeah, an artist can break into the machine if they wanted to, take the hard disk, or stick a USB memory stick onto the hard disk, onto the machine, take the data away. They also probably don't like the heat and the noise, and that's what PC over IP is about. Yep. Okay, demo time. So I'm going to demo 3 particular things. I'm not a visual artist, I'm an engineer by trade, so I'm going to show you a very basic application called Blender, which you'll probably be familiar with. The reason I'm going to show you Blender is I'm going to show you that I'm working from a machine in Amsterdam. And that's also going to lead into my session statistics viewer. So this is a tool that we give. It's a tool you can download from our website to show you the bandwidth requirements live, so you can make a baseline and decide exactly how much bandwidth you need to buy from your telco, or how much bandwidth you need to allow when you're going into a public cloud provider. And then I'm going to show you the Cloud Access Manager. This is a tool that we give which allows you to manage all of your virtual machines. So you as the IT person can turn them on, turn them off, assign them to a user, delete them when they're finished, move the data out. Okay. So the hardware client that's been passed around the room, who's got that at the moment? Could you lift it up and there's at the front there? Okay, all right. So this is typically what you would see on a user's desk in the office. So it's like a terminal. You plug your monitors, mouse, keyboard, Wacom tablet, network. So that sits on your desk. There's no heat and noise from this. There's no fan even. It's a very low-powered device. The workstation is somewhere else. The room is cool and quiet. Alternatively, you can use this software client. This is the Teradici software client. It's running on my Mac. We have it for Windows. We have it for tablets. So I've set up a connection to something called EUCAM 2018. This is a virtual workstation running in Amsterdam. I'm going to log in as a user called jblogs. This is where we really test the network. I'm crossing my fingers. Okay. Thank you. All right, so I've already got Blender running. So these pixels are being generated by a graphics adapter in Amsterdam in a virtual machine running Windows in Amsterdam. Okay, so it's not running here. I'm not going to unplug the network, but yeah, that's running in Amsterdam. Okay, just to show you it is. I'm opening a web browser on this virtual machine, and I just type in Google. Okay, now geographically it's found that I'm actually running this machine in the Netherlands, so if anyone knows their European country codes, it's come up to Google Netherlands, so this is running over there. And if I just show the Blender a bit more, I just want to get some performance in, because then I can go to my management tool, and this is now showing me certain metrics of what's happening. So for example, if I look at latency, this is showing me I've got about an 18 millisecond round trip time from Amsterdam to here and back again. So that's pretty reasonable in terms of performance for Wacom tablets, and also for interactivity with artists working on their applications in a workstation in the cloud. I can also look at nice things like frame rate. Okay, so I'm getting about 30 frames per second, but I've actually capped my workstation to run at 30. I can push this up to 60, which is reasonable. I can also look at lovely things like transmit bandwidth, so how much transmitting is coming out. That's the maximum, so I've got about 90 meg there running. Yeah, but the blue line is showing me exactly what's happening. This is not very much at all. But the more pixels I send, so if I leave that running full screen, it will show me a higher graph. So this gives you the ability to measure how much a PC over IP session is using. Then you can calculate and extrapolate and decide what your network is doing. You can also do it using Microsoft Performance Monitor if you're familiar with the Microsoft tool. It's the same counters I'm looking at, it's the same stuff. So I've got round trip latency here, for example. It's showing me an average of 17 seconds. I've got transmit bandwidth, which is showing me about 1 meg, so not much at all. And how many frames per second have I got? About 20. Yeah. So it all depends on the application that's running, how many frames are running, how much data is coming down the network. Okay. Any questions on that? I know it's not a massive performance that I'm showing. I'm not showing, something interesting. It's a basic application, just showing you the concept of PC over IP and the pixels coming to us from Amsterdam to Stuttgart or from somewhere else to somewhere else. It doesn't really matter. Okay, now this is a virtual machine, and what I'm going to show you now is how it's managed. So if I look at this machine here, this is my Cloud Access Manager. This is hosted on the internet, and I've actually logged in as a user called Jonathan, so that's the administrator of all these virtual machines. And you can see I've got a list of users here. These are all my corporate users on the system, and you can see that they're assigned certain workstations. So when I logged in earlier on, I logged in as JBlogs, and that person is assigned a machine called RWGPU1. All right, so that was the workstation we were using. I can create new users. I can delete users. This allows me to manage users as well as workstations. These are my workstations I've got. I only have 4. You'll notice I've got Linux machine, Windows machine, and I can also see the power state that they're running. So this allows me to do power management, which means I'm controlling my operational expenditure. I can turn the machines off, which means they're costing me nothing. If I turn them on again, they start to cost me, but I'm using them for the purpose of making film. Okay, I can also see the location. So this is a Microsoft location called West Europe, which is based in Amsterdam. So it just gives you an idea of where these devices are. I can create brand new machines here, and we provide you with some templates to do this. So if I chose, for example, Server 2016 Graphics, that will go off and build me a virtual graphics machine, and this will take 10 minutes. So after 10 minutes, I will have a workstation ready for a new artist to start working. I may have to install some applications, or I may have a template which installs the applications as well. You can choose how to do that. In fact, what you can do if you come down here is you can take one of our existing templates and you can edit them to work in the way that you want to. So for example, we have an auto shutdown option to save you money, which means after 240 seconds we shut down the machine if no one is using it. Yeah, because I know some artists can go off for a long coffee break. Yeah, and that means they're incurring costs on your cloud. We can also choose the class of virtual machine. So Microsoft have a series of machines called NV, and they start with a 6, they have a 12, and they have a 24. Each of these has a certain cost associated to them, so you can then choose what is most suitable for you. And the same for if you're using Amazon or Google or any other cloud provider. So yeah, this allows you to modify a template, and then you can save it as an internal template. So I've created one called Jonathan VM, which is a particular one for my own demo. Okay. If I go back to the workstations, if I take this machine here, which I'm not using, no one's using it, so I'm going to hit the stop button. And that's now going to save me money. Deallocated in Microsoft world of cloud means not costing you any money. Okay? If it's running, it's costing you money. So that's what we're doing here. We've also got another option, which Jeremy's going to talk about in a minute. So create means build a brand new machine. Add means add an existing machine. And that existing machine can be a physical workstation that you're already running with Teradici. So it could be physical or virtual. Or it could be in an other cloud like Amazon or Google. So you may have a network which strides multiple public cloud providers plus your internal network. So you can add any workstation that's running a Teradici host on it into your existing CAM environment. Okay, so it brings it all together. Okay, anything else I need to show you? Yeah? You think I'm finished? I think you're finished. Okay, I'm finished. Any questions on that? Yes? Currently, no. So I have to create the workstation. Yeah. So if for example this workstation here, I've just shut it down. So which is the one I just shut that one down. If a user tries to log on to it, it will recognize that the user gets a message saying this machine is turned off. It's turning on. Come back after a coffee. Yeah, an espresso, not a cappuccino. Okay. So yes, that happens. And automatically, if that machine isn't used for 240 seconds or whatever time you choose, it will be deallocated and turned off. So power management is very important, yeah. No mouse movement, no application, so it's no interaction from the user. It wouldn't be rendering. Typically, these machines here would not be render nodes, they would be... okay.
Yeah, and that's a...
I'll let Ian answer that one.
That's a good question. We have had that requirement come up, and we actually have in the template an ability to look at the CPU load, so sometimes you don't want to switch it off. Yeah.
Okay, question.
If you automatically switch off your workstation, there's no configuration to begin. How do you do that?
So you'd have to make your own template to do that, to choose what applications are going to be in it, if it's going to be rendering or whatever. So yeah, so you're going to have to decide what's in that virtual machine and who's going to use it, and also how you allocate it as well. So for example, you'll notice this user Jonathan has 2 virtual machines allocated to him, whereas this machine here, Bernard Laporte, only has 1 machine allocated to them. So you'll have to decide how to plan that. So for example, if this machine here, RW Linux 1, has got 2 users who can use it, but they will each have their own profile. So when they log in, it's a Microsoft machine, they'll have 2 separate profiles on there, but yes, you've got to plan it. Yeah. Yeah.
When you're talking about deallocating, are you hibernating the machine or is it shut down?
It's a Microsoft Windows server shutdown or a Linux shutdown, and it's also turned off in the Microsoft Azure cloud, switched off, yeah. So it's shut down politely and then turned off.
If you choose to configure it that way, so you can choose to configure it, you can choose that time longer.
Yeah.
Hibernation's a problem for virtual workstations because the graphics state on the GPU is not easily hibernated, and the cloud vendors are working hard with NVIDIA to make sure that they can figure out that state management when the machines are hibernated, but that technology is in the works, but not actually.
So coming from a VDI background, hibernation and sleep are always turned off in virtual machines because of this problem, because the client is now removed from their actual workstation. So all of that stuff is turned off, so that's what we have to look at. Yeah, because the client is now divorced physically from the remote machine. Yeah, another question. So.
Do you have any experience about Asian countries with bandwidth?
It's not the bandwidth, it's more the latency from here. So for example, I did an event in Tokyo, and I was working in London setting it up. This was in Amazon in Tokyo, and I was setting it up. It was VDI level stuff. It wasn't animator stuff. So if you're late, you're going to get about 200 to Asia from here, as in latency. That's going to be the killer. Yeah.
Tokyo is perhaps a country.
Extreme, yeah, yeah. So we have people, customers, India to UK. They're using about 4 to 8 megabits per second, but the latency is on the edge even then. Yeah.
So I'm just curious, that latency is a killer. Like in the case where you have that latency with, like you can say 4K resolution, you're playing back, even if it's delayed, it's still playback.
Mm.
There's issues with that.
Yeah.
But still, not as peaceful like you're talking about. I've got a stylus and I'm trying to do things, but I'm playing on it.
You're right. Yeah. Mm. The latency of playback is not worrying, it's more the interactivity. So the keyboard, mouse, Wacom tablet, 3D space mouse, that's the interaction. That's when the artists just throw it out and say it's rubbish. So you've got to have that.
So because of that, I'm wondering, so like in the gaming industry,
Yeah.
the latency was intended out system, you play kind of nice with that, you kind of, if they're making a certain stroke.
We do things like that anyway. We're doing local drawing of cursor and stuff like that. So we do local termination of certain devices to cope with latency. Yeah.
You see that they're making a certain move in
Yeah. We draw it locally on the screen and then send the signals back to the workstation as well to tell the workstation we've moved it as well. Otherwise, you've got to wait for the pixels to go from the control method to go from the user back to the workstation, get drawn on the workstation, and then sent back. So we do a local draw here, and then we just send a control message back to the VM saying we've moved the mouse as well, please, up to there.
That's a Teradici.
Yeah, Teradici thing. Yeah, we've had that in the Zero clients for a long time. They are a network provider in London who look after most of the M&E customers in London. It's a big fat pipe, yeah. Yeah. Okay, I may need to take some questions later. I'm going to pass over to Jeremy. Are you ready? Okay.
Yeah. So, can you guys hear me all right? Hello, hello. Yeah, hello. My name is Jeremy Smith. I'm from a company called JELLYFISH Pictures, and we're using PC over IP. But as custom practice, I have got to show you a couple of your show reel. So. My name is Jeremy Smith from a company called JELLYFISH Pictures, and I'm here to help talk about with the guys here from Teradici. Just to give you a bit of background about JELLYFISH, we're 200 artists, technicians, and production staff. We have 4 spaces in 3 different locations in London. We do full CG, film, visual effects, broadcast, motion graphics, 2D animation work. And we've won several awards over the years, from Emmys to RTS awards and VS awards and so forth. So we're really proud of the work that we've done over the years. So just to give you, there's several things at the heart of JELLYFISH: creative brilliance, world-class logistics, groundbreaking tech, and awesome talent, the people that we hire. But today, it's all about the tech. So when we take a look at JELLYFISH, we had several things from a studio's point of view that we had to manage. So things like we need space quickly. We need to set up artists with the correct tools. Now this includes things like pipeline applications, the right versions of software, so forth and so forth. We had to invest in on-premise hardware and real estate and the cost to house new staff. So the property in London, as I'm sure many people in the room here will know, that real estate in London is extortionately high. So anything you can do to help with bringing those costs down actually helps massively. And just to give you a bit of context, this is a very, very rough guide to a map of London. Now, our main office is in Oxford Circus here, or Oxford Street, which is in central London. But a while ago, a few years ago rather, we opened up a studio in Brixton, which is south of the river. And a while ago, we opened up 2 offices in the Oval. Now, we wanted basically kind of one coherent office and one coherent places across multiple geographic locations. So at the studios in the Oval, there's actually no computers. They're all using the Zero clients that Jonathan was showing was talking about earlier. So this helped us save costs on things like storage, software licensing, backups, and all the rest of it, security, and all the rest of it. So within those two oval studios, there are 2 network switches, and that's it. So, and through that, they're able to access, a couple hundred terabytes of storage or half a petabyte of storage, the render farm, whether on-prem or rendering in the cloud, and so forth and so forth. So, and if we take a look here, there is a picture of it, and it's kind of hard to tell in the photo there, but there's no computers on the desk or under the floor. There's just those little boxes. So, this studio, there is no on-premise hardware besides 2 switches. There is no server room. It's a scale approach to how we work with what Jonathan was saying earlier about, you can pay by workstations by the minute or by the hour or, so forth. It's also absolutely silent, so it's kind of interesting to go into like a visual effects or an animation shop and actually not hear any hum of computers or anything. So it's kind of cool but eerie at the same time. And how did we do it? How did we do it? So we built a private cloud in Brixton using the PC over IP remote workstation card. So the guys at Teradici, they've got several offerings. Some of them is the Cloud Access Plus stuff that the guys here were talking about earlier, and the other is basically using a PC over IP host card that you can put into your existing workstations. And also when we need to do, as with the way that we do burstable rendering, we're also able to do burstable workstations. So in the scenario that where we had to hire, like say 20 people for a week just to get push a job out the door, the old school way of doing that would be to buy 20 workstations, and then we may be in the scenario where basically those 20 workstations are sitting there doing nothing. You can use them for rendering, but you know what I mean. And also when we need to do, as with the way that we do burstable rendering, we're also able to do burstable workstations. So in the scenario that where we had to hire, like say 20 people for a week just to get push a job out the door, the old school way of doing that would be to buy 20 workstations, and then we may be in the scenario where basically those 20 workstations are sitting there doing nothing. You can use them for rendering, but you know what I mean. So it's just having that flexibility, and obviously we connect to these using the Dell Wise PCI 0 clients. So a while ago, just we were talking about latency earlier. We really wanted to push one of these VMs just to try and get it running in the cloud and everything else. So this was some time ago, but I was on a holiday or vacation, and I was on a flight, and I thought the flight had Wi-Fi, and so I thought, well, let's give this a go. So this is a PC over IP session running from a Dell laptop about 30,000 feet over the air. So, which was pretty cool, and this is connecting to a VM. Now this is managing the render farm, opening up things like Maya, Softimage, Nuke, and all that sort of stuff. And I was able to basically, open models, rotate them around, submit jobs to the farm, and everything else like that. And so obviously the latency in that high is high, but it was usable. The only issue is that when we flew over the Mediterranean, that's when the latency got really bad. So, but it just kind of shows you the actual protocol can handle it, and the way that it adapts to different network environments is pretty phenomenal. So I'm going to try and just show you something. If you just blank the screen for a second. So we did a show on dinosaurs a while ago, and so this is a real machine. So this can be a VM in Azure or basically a real physical PC on-prem. So when you talk about being able to broker basically VMs that you want to pay for the hour or leverage existing hardware that you already have, the solution that these guys showed off, which is called CAM, that allows us to do this. And so this is using Cloud Access Plus, so it's pretty cool. But so this here is using an NVIDIA GPU on the back end, and we have animators doing this. And the cool thing here is that there is no VPN, there is no nothing like that, so you don't have to worry about 10 gig firewalls and setting up someone's VPN on the endpoints and all the rest of it. The guy Teradici in CAM supports things like multi-factor authentication, which is really cool. And just to show you a bit more stuff, it's like we've worked on several. Running a Windows machine from a Mac keyboard is challenging. But yeah, like just to show you kind of the interactivity, and so we have people that are using this for comp, animation, motion graphics. We even do editing over it, and And so just to again show you,
Whereabouts is the machine anyway?
this machine is based in London.
Okay.
It's physically based in London. It actually literally sits beside my desk where I sit, and this is my test box. And so, we've got things like Nuke and, the full, interactivity, and, it's pretty, we have 70 people using this every day, dual screen support monitors, and, they can't tell the difference, which is really cool. And you can do everything that you can do in the office. So I've showed you Maya Soft Demolish, and this is basically our render farm that we're having it running back in London right now currently. So again, it's just when it comes to if you're doing like a virtual office, you need more office space. You don't have to basically look at buying like another like storage cluster or another backup licenses and so forth and so forth. So it's for us it's really game changing, and the fact that I can sit here and start copying shots from Germany back in London with this experience is pretty phenomenal. And so a lot of that is testimony to the work that these guys have done, because we wouldn't be doing the virtualized desktops without them. So I think we're out of time, but maybe if there's any few questions. Yeah, sure.
You were talking about using Wacom tablets, but how about Cintiq?
We haven't used Cintiq with PC over IP because we only have a few in the building. But there's no reason why not, because Ian would be able to test that.
So some of the Cintiq are supported on the original host workstation, host cards to the Zero clients, and for the cloud access software, we're starting with the Wacom 660 and 650 series, and we have a bunch of people requesting Cintiq support. Some of them may actually work, but they need to be validated. So it may work, but it may not work. So, there's another question.
How are you guys managing this license with Nuke and Maya and so on? Is this your license from the studio which you bring?
So there's different ways about doing it. So in this case, we are providing the license.
Is there also, the next question is, let's say you do this on a cloud system, and how is then the management of the license? Because then, let's say I have only no license of Maya, and I want to rent the virtual machine with the Maya license only for this time.
Yeah.
For a whole month.
So that is something that the guys at Teradici can't do. But if you're using the cloud, so we're using Azure, and Azure do have an agreement with that, so you can get a Maya license with the VM, and that's getting better as time goes on, and more applications being supported. But that's kind of Microsoft's.
This is where we may see solution providers come in and
Yeah.
provide you with a service, which is a remote workstation with Maya and whatever other applications
Yeah.
fully licensed, and you take it from them, rent it for a month, and then finish.
So it's really down to like Microsoft, Google, and AWS to sort the licensing part of it out, because you're right, a VM without a license is kind of useless. So, but it is getting better as time goes on.
So we're going to have to take some questions outside. So I'm going to be out in the lobby in a minute. We have to break the session for the next thing. But scan your badge. You could win an Amazon gift card. Thank you.